Thanks. Okay. Now, I'm a victim of chronic harassment and cyberstalking. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
What information would you like first?
How long has it been going on for?
It started in 2006, and it went on.
2006.
Yes, and it went on for a decade.
Okay, and then was there a gap between sort of 2006? You said it went on for 10 years. Then it stopped in 2016. Did it for a few years, or?
It literally didn't stop for 10 years.
Oh, okay, so it's been going. Okay.
Okay, and it ended up with me having a total breakdown and in 5 times in psychiatric ward, and with PTSD.
God, it's horrible. Yeah.
And I'm afraid it's the fault of Thames Valley Police.
It's what? Sorry.
Well, I believe it's gross police negligence.
Okay. Do you know who it was that was harassing you?
I do.
And who?
Someone called Felicity Loud.
Felicity Loud.
Yes, she's notorious. She was the first ever UK case of a custodial conviction of cyberstalking. Yes, that's right, cyberbullying as it was called at the time. All right.
Okay.
To start the story, I will tell you, I have never communicated with a woman, apart from 2 phone calls in 2006 when I was a web designer.
Okay.
I'm now on benefits. I've left Oxford, and I've moved to Birmingham.
Okay.
I left the site of all my trauma, in other words. I was happy in Oxford for 25 years, okay?
Yeah.
But because the police shielded a known and jailed criminal, as opposed to protecting an innocent citizen, and I can quote Thames Valley Police spokesman from an Oxford Mail article in 2007, and if you're recording this, yeah?
Yep.
And I'm recording it too, right?
Yep.
The man is called, he may not work any longer, but he's called James Clements, and he was Thames Valley Police's spokesman, okay?
Yeah.
And I've sent an email to professional standards at Thames Valley Police.
Yeah.
I haven't had a response.
Okay. When was the email sent? Do you know?
If I look at it, hang on. Excuse me. All I'll say is that it's only now that I feel I've got the strength to take action, okay, and demand answers.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can understand that. So
Yeah.
the email, was it sent sort of recently, or was that a number of years ago as well?
Not at all. It was very recently.
Okay, very recently. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just about to give you the date. It was. I sent 2 emails. Okay,
Yeah.
on Saturday, the 27th of February.
27th of February.
Yeah. To professional standards at thamesvalley.pnn.police.uk.
Yeah.
Are you able to get those emails up?
I don't have access to those, unfortunately. You obviously go to a specific department.
Sure.
But I can't access them now. But what I can do, so that we know, like I said, I don't know what's happened with those emails. That someone may well have picked them up, but I'm not sure. It's something may be actioned. I can't speak for what's obviously happened to those. However, from your sort of perspective at the moment, what I can do for you is we can do a complaint over the phone, if that's something you wish to do.
I very much do, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do it without a solicitor. At this point. Okay?
Oh, sorry, the line just dropped a bit there. What did you say at the end there?
Right. At this point, I'm willing to do that without a solicitor.
Okay.
Because I believe in total transparency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the first thing I will say is that after 10 years of... no, I will focus on that later.
Okay.
I did actually end up going to prison myself, okay? on a supposed charge of harassment, which is a different matter. I'm not a violent person, and I didn't threaten violence. And the worst thing I did was stamp on someone's glasses, and I ended up going to HMB Bullingdon, which is a total hellhole that I barely survived. And I was spiked with spice. I was robbed. My neighbour hanged himself.
That's utterly horrible, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any sort of...
And it's all the faults, and I'll name the man. Colin Brooker. Sergeant Colin Brooker. Yeah.
Okay. Was he a police officer?
Yes. And okay, so to try and give you a context, she approached me as a web designer to do a silly little, ironically, some graphics for a blog that she had. Right?
Okay.
Blogs were the weapons that she used thereafter.
Okay, yeah.
And the really evil thing is that Google have a tool called Blogger. Okay?
Yeah.
And if anyone publishes information on Blogger, because it's owned by Google, it goes straight up to number one on the front page.
Okay.
All right? Which resulted in the entire front page of Google being full of blogs saying that I rape and murder women and carry a gun.
Oh, that's disgusting. That's absolutely horrible.
Isn't it? And do you know what the police told me? They said it was a civil and not a criminal matter. She published my home address. I slept with a knife under my bed.
Yeah.
Okay? And so Colin Brooker told me about this criminal, already jailed stalker, that if it was upsetting me, I shouldn't be looking at the blogs. Excuse my language, but how fucking dare he?
Yeah, no, I can understand that frustration from that response. So you said Mr. Brooker, he was an officer, a police officer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So was he the first officer that you spoke to about sort of the issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the information that I've given with professional standards, I've given some I've kept it concise. I've given some relevant links to an. I did manage to get all of the blogs removed. Okay, so I don't have that evidence, but I do have. There are 2 blogs which are smoking guns. Okay.
Okay.
And one of them is unbelievably long and rambling. She's claiming to be a victim of police injustice, even though she's been constantly jailed. Right?
Yeah.
She's not learning her lesson because she's causing distress to the man who is in charge of Grenfell Tower.
Okay.
And to give you I'll be as graphic as I should be. There was a woman. I only met her once, okay, and on the internet, I became familiar with a group of other people that were experiencing nothing like the same level, but harassment from Loud.
Okay.
Some of them were ripperologists, okay, Jack the Ripper specialists.
Okay.
That's the reason why I didn't want to work with Felicity in the first place. So the second phone call, where she was talking about some special branch work for Jack the Ripper, I just spotted a red flag immediately and didn't return the call. I ignored her, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that was prudent of me. I think there's I will watch a serial killer documentary or something like that, but I think there's a lot of very, very sick people that get obsessed with that type of thing. And in my case, to give you an example, one of her blogs which said Daniel Hart murder question, right? She would have things like Daniel Hart commits crimes in secret.blogspot.com. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, I'm an artist. She took one of my life paintings, you know, a nude lady, made in bleach and ink. Right? Quite an experimental painting, because you're working with Domestos bleach and Indian ink and quink.
Yeah.
You know, it's I think it's something that one of my better. I went to Oxford University, you see, and I studied art there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so art is very, you know, what she did was she took that drawing and she said that I sodomized and murdered that woman.
Horrible thing for someone to say.
She has done worse with other people.
Yeah.
She was working with, again, Jack the Ripper related, a man called Mario Aleppo, who works at the National Archives in Kew. Right?
Mm-hmm.
She didn't get what she wanted, so her solution was to target his daughter. And so she published a blog about his daughter, found a photo of her on her wedding day, and wrote, "At least the bitch managed to keep her legs shut for one day."
Oh, it's just horrible and disgusting comments, really, isn't it?
And the police didn't think that any of this was criminal. And James Clements, who's Thames Valley Police's spokesman, in 2000, and I was on the front page of the Oxford Mail, saying I was a victim of the cyberstalker too. Because by that point, and as I said, we got together with a group of people.
Yeah.
And we had that solidarity and courage. And I went down to Bow Magistrates Court and saw her go down.
Yeah.
The judge said 6 months was nothing like enough. But that was all that they had the power to do.
Right, okay.
There was a woman called Rachel North, who I'll bring up in a minute, and she got a restraining order.
Okay.
And because of Rachel's action and strength, Felicity was jailed on account of her harassment.
Okay.
I never got the justice I deserve. But to give you an idea of the scope of it, on that day in court, there were 22 other individuals, all of whom were granted ASBOs.
Okay.
That's just one day in Felicity's life.
Yeah.
Okay? Rachel North, as well as being a July the 7th bomb victim. Yeah?
Yeah, fine.
She was also absolutely savage. I'll be graphic. She was going into her house in Islington in London, and she was suddenly barged by a young Jamaican man, right, who happened to be an illegal immigrant.
Right.
She was then raped anally and vaginally. But for what it's worth, the man was 17 years old. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So she was brutally raped, and her nipple was nearly bitten off. She was strangled with her own telephone cord, and left for dead.
Oh, absolutely horrible.
Do you know what Felicity Loud did?
What did she do?
She set up a blog saying that Rachel was a sex offender, having unconsensual sex with a minor. Which, for what it's worth, is not even true, because a minor is 16, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the obscenity is off the scale.
Yeah, but I mean, that sort of... Yeah, for someone to do that, it just...
She's,
you know what I mean? It makes you question a lot of things.
She needs a long time in prison or mental hospital.
Yeah. Okay. And was there any other officers that sort of dealt with you sort of through any of the process of reports that you may have made over the years as well, Daniel, that you wanted to sort of, bring to their attention?
I hope you'll have it all in your records. I mean, at the time, I was interviewed by Radio 1 Extra on cyberbullying.
Okay.
I don't have that recording anymore.
And when was that, back in 2006 as well?
No, about 2007, when I was I'd already endured 15 months of harassment without the police taking any interest, and I took matters into my own hands.
Yeah.
And whilst not fearless, because I was terrified,
yeah,
I felt that it was better to confront it than to hide it, and that's how I feel now. Having recovered from a breakdown and having left Oxford.
Yeah.
The time is now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can understand why you want that. And why you'd want
Okay,
to
I made some terrible mistakes, and the charges of harassment. I managed to get 3 restraining orders. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about my mistakes on that front. But I was not violent, and neither did I threaten violence.
No, I understand.
But the only violence that I did enact was stamping on this man's £1,500 glasses. Right?
Yeah.
He was a friend for 7 years, and I would also like that investigated, because he was slandering me all over Facebook, as was Isabel de Vasconcelos. I was being arrested by the Metropolitan Police and Thames Valley Police, sometimes simultaneously. I was having to go down to Inner London Crown Court because of this woman, Isabel de Vasconcelos, who is a pathological liar.
And what was it that she was sort of lying about in the process?
Well, we had a relationship for a few months. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm an artist and very interested in the art world.
Yeah.
But I also hate the art world in many ways. And this only confirms that to me, because some people who claim to be artists are nothing of the sort, in my opinion. They're careerists. They're immoral, ruthless careerists.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I saw 2 police reports. First of all, shall we talk about Isabel de Vasconcelos?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Well, after a few months of a crap relationship.
Yeah.
And because of my PTSD, I argue as well, because that's not in my nature either. And proper girlfriends know me.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't be like that. And
yeah.
But the thing is, she lived right next door to Bethnal Green Police Station. Okay.
Okay.
In Victoria Park Square, London, in a flat.
Okay.
And technically, I understand that 3 or more unwanted messenger messages can be construed as harassment. Yeah?
Yeah, yes. That's
right.
generally the process for harassment, yeah.
So for a very cynical and, in my opinion, evil person, all they need to do is print them out and go next door and go to the police station, and they've got you.
Yeah, also would be looked at in terms of what the content of those messages were as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I said. I called her a pretentious bitch. Okay? And then I got a phone call from a police officer and I'm afraid I forget his name. But it was an email with a request to have a chat with a police officer, and I did that immediately. And
was that in London? With the police?
yes, yeah. It may not have been Bethnal Green Police Station, but it was Metropolitan. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I phoned him, and he had a man-to-man chat and said, "Look, it's not worth it, mate." That type of thing. He was a nice man. He was a good man.
Yeah.
And I took his advice. Okay, and I was cautioned. And from there on, I left Isabel alone. Who, by the way, Isabel actually knew about my history with Loud.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. I would like her investigated because I believe that both Saad and Isabel lied in police reports and conspired.
Okay. Do you know Isabel's date of birth?
I don't. But I was just going to say, you know that phrase, to add insult to injury?
Okay.
So after 10 years of police negligence, I was hammered by the police. I was literally being released on bail from Abingdon Station, getting home, and then suddenly I was arrested by the Metropolitan Police and taken down to Bethnal Green Police Station, from where I could actually see Isabel's flat window.
Okay.
It was that close as I was going in on the van. But what Isabel did was 10 days later, 14 days later, something like that. At that period of time, I think it was. That's when it all really went pear-shaped for me, and I think that was probably 2014, December 2015, something like that.
Okay, so this sort of relationship with her, when it went, obviously, after the couple of messages, the caution, and then everything after, this is sort of 2014, 2015 sort of time are we talking about, yeah?
Yeah, my only... look, any accusations of harassment, as far as I'm concerned, only happened in from 2015 onwards.
Okay.
I did have a caution for battery in 2001.
Okay.
Is it battery or it was a minor assault, and something I regret in my life. Okay.
I understand.
But anyway, Isabel. So I was cautioned by London police. 10 days later, that wasn't enough for Isabel. So she decided, and I didn't know this because she blocked me on Facebook, and I blocked her, obviously, sensibly as well. But someone else informed me that she'd written a long post, which stated that I wasn't cautioned by the Metropolitan Police, but I was charged by the Metropolitan Police for harassment. Okay?
Right.
And she lied to her 10,000 followers. Okay?
Okay. So this is still on Facebook, is it?
No, it's all gone.
No, I meant it occurred on Facebook originally, didn't it?
It did, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw screenshots of everyone weighing in and saying, "No smoke without fire. I've heard a lot about this type of thing." That kind of thing. And then a man called Francis Ween, who happens to be sub-editor of Private Eye, believe it or not.
Okay.
Now, Private Eye know a lot about libel and slander. But because Isabel is a very manipulative person, and she convinced Francis Ween, who doesn't know me from Adam, that I'm a bad person and a dangerous person. So he wrote a post to say, "I have heard reports that a so-called graphic designer, I'm not even a real graphic designer. I'm a so-called graphic designer, right? So this is the kind of bullying that I've experienced. From Oxford, has been harassing a number of women. May I suggest that, should you be unfortunate enough to encounter this man, that you block him forthwith?"
behaviour like that.
He should be reprimanded. Okay.
And this post was in what sort of part of 2015? Can you remember?
I can't be clear, I'm afraid. I can't be more clear than that year. Than that year.
Okay, that's fine.
If you've got historic police reports, you should be able to piece things together. And
Okay.
and some of those things I haven't said, right?
Okay, yeah.
But that's one example. Another thing that pushed me to the breakdown point was that because of in her police report, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know that some people, if someone says that they felt terrified of someone else's behaviour, it's kind of inarguable, isn't it? Because that's their emotion.
Yes, if that's sort of, I suppose if someone perceives something as that, yes.
Yeah. But I actually don't think calling someone a pretentious bitch and not doing anything more warrants that. Okay.
I mean, yeah. I suppose it's down to how said person would perceive it.
No, not really. No, I was banned from the entire borough of Tower Hamlets, even though I would never consider ever phoning her up or messaging her or visiting her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And because I live in Oxford, thankfully I don't live in Oxford now, but I lived there, and I was required to go, not just Oxford Magistrates Court on behalf of Saad Qureshi, but in a London Crown Court, not Magistrates Court.
Okay.
Crown Court's for murderers. Am I right?
Not necessarily.
No,
Again, I don't know the ins and outs of.
But it's considered to be a much more serious business than a magistrate's court, isn't it?
I suppose on the general sort of consensus, and yeah.
Yeah. So how come I was required to go there? But I went. I had to get up at 5 a.m. to go there, and that happened 4 times because every time it was adjourned for psychiatric reports.
Okay.
So I was spending money that I didn't have, being turned away, being distressed, having to go through months of that, and dealing with the legacy of Loud and the police injustice that I suffered. All right, it's all tied in together as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So just to sort of clarify for my record here, Daniel.
Yeah.
When I send the complaint across, what sort of time frame is this spanning over? So we start in sort of 2006 time, and obviously we're at about 2015 now. Where does it sort of go up to?
Well, there are 2 blogs still up. There's one that says I stalked her for 10 years relentlessly. Okay?
Okay. Stalked who? Isabella or?
No.
Loud.
We're talking about Loud. Loud really is the focus. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The other 2 are subsidiary.
Okay. And when were these blogs, the 2 that are still up, when were they created by her?
I've given links in the email.
Okay, the email that you sent to
The 2 emails, yeah. And one says I push women downstairs and abuse them. One and of course it alleges that I was the one that stalked her for 10 years when it was actually the opposite.
Yeah.
And that is simply how sick she is. And that's her modus operandi.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, fine, yeah.
Can I go back to Saad Qureshi?
Can you go back to who? Sorry.
Can I go back to Saad Qureshi and I can give you his address?
Yeah, who's Saad Qureshi, sorry?
He's the man that that I know lied in a police report.
Okay.
Together with Isabel. So Isabel said that she was so terrorised by me that she left her flat. Okay? She had to move because of me. That's not true. That's a lie.
Okay.
Right? And she deserves to be investigated by the police.
And did you ever sort of bring that up to the Metropolitan Police about the fact that you think she's? You know...
Look, I was in a situation where I was literally sobbing in police interview rooms because I was with a spivvy young 20-year-old duty solicitor who advised me to say no comment to everything. Now, I don't want to sound arrogant, but you know, I went to Oxford University. I'm very articulate. I can stand up for myself as well as many lawyers could.
Yeah.
I think. Although I don't know the technicalities and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Right.
I'm trying to keep on my train of thought.
Yeah, so we were at Saad Qureshi.
Yeah. I'd like you to take this information.
Yeah.
It may be impossible to prove, but this obviously appalling act of violence of stamping on his glasses for being a mendacious snake. I was friends with him for 7 years. Okay.
Okay.
I was pretty much like his art advisor. In my opinion. Okay. That's in my opinion, right? I introduced him to an awful lot of stuff, and he's now a very successful artist.
Okay.
But my biggest mistake was when I was with Isabel, who pretends to be part of the art world, right? Was to introduce Isabel to Saad. So Isabel came to visit Saad in his studio, which is called Avada, on Oxpens Road.
On what road, sorry?
Oxpens Road, which is where the supposed attack happened.
Okay.
I know I breached my restraining order, and I wasn't in a good head state. Okay, I didn't care for myself. I didn't care what happened to myself.
Yeah. But
I wasn't going to hurt anyone else. For me, my logic was he deserved to have those £1,500 glasses broken, and that was it. And I stamped on them, and I ran through the graveyard. I turned round and said, "Saad, fuck off! I'm not going to hurt you."
Yeah.
And then I went into the jam factory and calmed down for 10 minutes. And I went down onto Oxpens Road, and 3 police cars screamed round the corner. Which I think suggests that he might have been lying to the police.
Okay, so you think he sort of suggested that there was something more than you just smashing his
Definitely.
glasses?
Definitely. Yeah. Why would 3 police cars be coming like absolutely rapid response? And the second thing that Saad Qureshi of 69 Asquith Road, Rose Hill.
Do you have the postcode?
No, I don't.
No. Just repeat the street name for me again, sorry, because the line's just a little bit...
Yeah, it's my phone. It's 69 Asquith Road.
Yeah.
Rose Hill.
Grove Hill.
Rose Hill. You know, the estate, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I was also banned from going to Rose Hill, which, you know, if you have a restraining order is I can understand why. But I had no intention of going there. All right?
Okay.
I would never have done that. Because I'm not a bad person. I've gone through hell, and the legacy of police and justice has, you know, really messed with my head so badly.
Yeah. Sort of.
That I don't think I'll ever recover. Okay. But I am seeing a psychiatrist about in a month's time.
Okay.
I've bought a book on PTSD. I'm doing everything I can to help myself.
Yeah.
And I'm out of a totally numb depression. And I'm finding myself much more energized and creative and positive and interested in life again.
Yeah, that's the best way to be.
So I'm on the road to recovery. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's really really good to be in that sort of position, Daniel. Where you are starting to see things.
Yeah.
And life as it is.
And not to try to let hatred consume you.
No.
And I said some things which I'm ashamed of, but I never deserved to go to prison for that. And the specific allegation I'm making about Saad Qureshi, as well as why were there 3 police cars in the first place? Look at what he's said in his reports, right? But another thing that he wrote in a police report, which I saw with my own eyes, along with what Isabel said about leaving her flat, was that Saad claimed to he said, I was with my witness, Iftikhar, my cousin.
Okay.
Oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
And I promise you, there was nobody else there. I was compos mentis. I, rightly or wrongly, I approached him from behind, and he had headphones on, and I got him in a headlock with the sole intention to remove his glasses and stamp on them, and that was that. Okay? And the other thing is, he owed me money that he never paid me.
Okay, you think that part of the report was, because he didn't want to give you that back?
I can't really answer that. Yeah. Except I think he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've got the inclusion of him in this.
So essentially we've got three reports here. Isabel de Vasconcelos, Saad Qureshi, and Felicity Loud. Now, the first time I got into police trouble with my first restraining order of 3, okay, was a very difficult time again, because when I was at Oxford and studying at Ruskin School of Drawing and Fine Art, okay, there was, and in my own college, St Edmund's Hall, in the year below me, there was a chap called Mike Stanley, a very gifted artist. Okay?
Yeah.
And he went on to great things and all sorts of galleries across the UK, including Modern Art Oxford. He was director of Modern Art Oxford, right?
Okay, yeah.
And absolutely tragically and ironically, Saad phoned me up to tell me one day when I was in London, Mike hanged himself. It was a private garden, a communal garden on Observatory Street, and Mike, you can't understand anyone's reason for suicide, but he was hanging from a tree with flies around his mouth, and flats all around, like windows everywhere. I've done an art project called 200 Reflections, which has been inspired by that.
Yeah.
Because it was like a piece of performance art, like an amphitheatre or something.
Okay.
He obviously did it as a public statement.
Okay, yeah, because he believed that those, people in the windows could see him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 2 years after that tragedy, I encountered his wife, who I'd never met before, and I had a very, very challenging and sometimes very rewarding relationship with his wife. in Stonesfield. And she has 3 kids. Finn, Jude and Lola.
Okay.
And it was... I tried to be like a stepfather.
Yeah.
And the elder 2, well, they were teenagers, but the young kid, he was only 8 or 9.
Okay.
And he loved me, and I loved him. And I loved Carrie as well, but I think, it's important that you know as well that I actually got an email from Carrie's mother.
Okay.
Telling me that she's really bad news and that I should avoid her. She's got psychological problems. So, I would never blame Carrie. Okay. She's kept his name, although he left her months before. They were, they had their relationship had ended. Okay.
Yeah.
And she's very much, actually, in my opinion, since I think that she's trading on the fact that she's a widow to suicide. That's my personal opinion, okay? But as far as I remember, I don't think I ever said that. Okay?
Yeah.
She was supposed to return some stuff to me. I would never want to report Carrie.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give you it's for myself. And this recording is for myself.
Yeah.
I just did all I could, and when it didn't work out, she wasn't returning my stuff. And I bought her loads of stuff, drum kits, loads of things.
Yeah.
Which is my choice. I'm not the sort of person to say, you owe me £5,000 back because I paid it, yeah?
Yeah.
But it was very, very tough to be involved in that, and I didn't really, I'm too vulnerable and sensitive to have handled it.
Yeah.
And it was very shocking when I got the communication from her own mother as well.
Yeah.
But the long and short of it is that I spiraled and I was arrested and given a restraining order. And I think it might have even been Carrie and her mother. I think it might be that I have 4 restraining orders.
Right, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I hold my hands up to any mistakes that I've made.
Yeah.
And I've served my time, more than served my time.
Yeah.
I showed tremendous courage in prison. I decorated my entire... I was on... Just to give you an idea of the pain that I've been through. When I was in HMB Bullingdon, I was on a first times wing. Okay? That's where you're away from the general population.
Okay.
E-wing is for paedophiles and police officers.
Okay.
Okay? So that's a high security area because they would basically get murdered.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, any you know what I mean, don't you? That criminals have their own criminals. No, not necessarily even criminals, but convicts have their own moral code of conduct.
Okay.
And top of their list is paedophiles. Anyway, I wasn't on that wing. I was on the first timers wing, and they were mostly young offenders and listeners, that type of thing.
Yeah.
It was a safe and happy environment, and but I was banged up for 23 and a half hours a day with a man who smashed his girlfriend's head through a television, and I was having panic attacks every night. And I just wanted to try and phone my parents once after lunch.
Yeah.
I went to the phone box, straight after eating the total shit that you get in prison. And a hugely expensive phone call that you have to wait 7 days just to get a PIN number for. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so your first time in prison, you're in isolation for 7 days and you can't even speak to your parents.
Yeah.
Because because the telephone clerk hasn't processed the information.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just made a phone call to my parents, and there's a senior officer at HMP Bullingdon who I would not mind if she was investigated. Right? Because she threw me straight off that wing when I was crying and saying, please don't do this. And she said, up it! Get off! Get out of my gaff! Right?
Mm-hmm.
She was a sadist. And I said something to her like, that behaviour is unacceptable. She said, I don't care what you think, I've been here 12 years. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was my introduction to hell. So that's Miss Rose. Then there's Senior Officer Wheeler, who, together with Senior Officer Blackman, actually said, and this would be on body cam footage, we're going to make sure we get you hurt.
Are they police officers or prison officers?
They're prison officers.
Prison officers.
Senior officers.
You said their surnames were Blackwell and what was it, sorry?
Pardon?
Was it Blackwell and Wheeler, did you say?
Mr. Wheeler.
Yeah.
Mr. Blackman.
Blackman, yeah.
Mr. Thornton.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Thornton paced the yard outside like a Nazi in a concentration camp and whisper in my window saying something along the lines of, we're going to make sure you get hurt as well. Okay, so Rose, Wheeler, Blackman and Thornton. I should add that there were some lovely officers as well. Just as, of course, there are lovely policemen. I'm not an anarchist.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And I met some great people, and the library was a sanctuary, and funnily enough, in that extreme adversity, I did thrive because I have this warrior-like protest spirit. Mm-hmm. Right? So I decorated my entire cell, walls to ceiling. One of the officers said it was like nothing. Actually, it wasn't one cell; it was 5 cells. Every one of the cells was a different art installation.
Okay.
And I totally smashed up a television, hung it from the ceiling, made an effigy of a hanging figure. Very, very dark stuff. And then I did very light stuff. I recreated a kind of fantasy of the Berlin Wall. Not because I'm a lunatic, but because I had a message to say. And it was covered in love hearts and words like kindness prevails.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If that's not courage in the face of adversity, I don't know what is. But I also said Nazi SOs out. And all over the wall I wrote, a rose by this is to quote Shakespeare, a rose by any other name would smell as rotten. You know that Shakespeare said a rose by any other name would smell as sweet?
Yes.
Yeah, and her name was Miss Rose. So she hated me because I called her bluff.
Yeah.
And I finally got an adjudication with the governor. Right?
Okay.
And it wasn't just the governor, it was 10 people in a room.
Yeah.
I explained it was a 100% punk art protest. I wasn't charged for criminal damage.
Yeah.
This is conjecture, but I absolutely felt a lot of admiration in the room.
Yeah.
Definitely admiration. And I think that's Governor Price. She was she seemed very kind.
Yeah.
But on the morning of that adjudication, Miss Rose kicked my door, stuck her finger up through the hatch, and said, "You fucking cunt."
Yeah. Absolutely horrible.
She's not a person that deserves to work in prison, is she?
With that sort of language, no, I wouldn't have thought so.
No. So I would like her to be reprimanded as well.
Okay. And did you ever sort of make because very much like the police force, a prison service also have their sort of ways of reporting and then investigating.
Okay.
Their own sort of prison officers, as it were, the same sort of way you would.
Okay. So that's fine. So in other words, that's not your department.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I mean, it would be more. I mean, it would certainly the sanction and the sort of. I think the most relevant thing for that scenario would be to go through the prison services sort of board of standards again, like you would the police.
Okay. In that case, I think I will. What I mean, what I'm doing is, I'm on diazepam at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm still taking my lithium for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which I'm not ashamed of mental health labels, but I think I may have been diagnosed because I think anyone would completely crack up through this, and I had a breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's from just from talking to you for the last sort of 53 minutes, it's, a tremendous amount of things that have happened over the course of the last sort of 15 years or so.
Yeah, I know. We're approaching an hour, so I think we should wind it down at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Now, I've told you my whole kind of not my life story because I've had many happy years, but the worst of my life.
Yeah. No, I think we've sort of come to an understanding through this sort of conversation.
And like I say, when you're in a police interview room and all you can do is say no comment and you're sobbing, because, and that's the oldest trick in the book. But if you actually were able to speak up like I'm doing, I don't think I would have got into any trouble at all.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes you question a lot of outcomes and processes that could have been differently.
It's a mess, and if the police believe they've got enough evidence, the phone call to the CPS is just, I know the CPS can reject some claims and things like that, but it's pretty much like it's a nepotistic world, in my opinion. Okay? Once the police have got you, rightly or wrongly, you're done. And the majority of people are rightly, justice is served.
Yeah.
In my case, it's more than a grey area. And yes, a very important one is to quote the article. I'm going to read this, just the brief information, okay? And it's from the Thames Valley Police spokesman going back 2007.
Yeah.
So That's the problem. I have been looking at no fee solicitors, but they don't go back beyond 6 years. At least the first one I've contacted.
Okay.
But I think that if I want to go down that path, I have a really strong case for compensation. And but furthermore, for her to get banged up. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the?
But what I would appreciate is to work with you together, and the Independent Police Complaints Commission, so that I don't need to deal with a lawyer, because I shouldn't have to.
No, I can understand where you're coming from in that respect.
Right.
So, sort of to conclude the sort of complaints record that I've got, to send across, Daniel.
Yeah.
Is there any other officers that you felt sort of wronged you in the process? Any others that you can remember?
I'm afraid there are not names I can remember. I mean, I was
referred to in the records anyway.
Yeah, when I mentioned Carrie, for example, and her mother. I was in a right state then, and I was visited by 3 sergeants who were only there because they were concerned for my welfare.
Yeah.
They weren't charging me for anything. They thought that I might be suicidal.
Okay.
So, it's a bit of... It's a head fuck.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Oh yes, I said that I was going to quote the Thames Valley Police spokesman.
Yes, from 2007.
Okay, so I'm clicking on an Oxford May. I was on the front of this, by the way, and it's 31st of May 2007. It's all in the email. Graphic designer Daniel Hart has told how he too was left fearing for his safety after months of online abuse from internet stalker Felicity Jane Loud. The other relevant information: Mr. Hart, 34, from Cowley, revealed that he has been subjected to 15 months of harassment after he designed graphics for Loud's blog. Okay. The artist said Loud had written online that he was a vindictive stalker and deliberately used the Google search engine to smear his good name, which is totally true. Yeah. Mr. Hart has taken on a solicitor to have the offensive material removed from the internet, but the bizarre postings are still largely in place. Yes, I did go to a solicitor who charged me £1,000 for a letter to Google. He was supposed to be... That was in posh Mayfair. He was supposed to be an expert in cyberbullying. He was charging me £800 an hour after a £1,000 letter. When he invoiced me £1,000 for the letter, I phoned him up and told him I had no intention whatsoever of paying it, and he simply dropped the case.
Okay. Yeah, so he wanted £1,000 for...
Just to write a letter, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Which I agreed to, I signed to.
Yeah.
But, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a quote by Shakespeare, "Kill all lawyers." I wouldn't go that far, but there are many absolutely immoral ones who pretend to act in the public interest. Yeah. It's a bit like Nick Clegg taking £3 million for Facebook. Yeah?
Yeah.
Per year. So, Mr. Hart said, "This has caused me great mental distress and she has pushed me close to the point of a breakdown." And then I said, "Felicity is a case study in madness, but her methods are very clear-headed. She should be jailed once she is apprehended. But the real comfort for me and lots of others who have also been targeted would be to have the offensive blogs removed. I have spoken to Rachel North about this a number of times, and I have a great deal of admiration for her. She is a very strong woman."
Yeah.
And then, of course, I also said at that time, Thames Valley Police have also been very supportive, and I know they are doing everything they can. No. Now, Miss North said Loud continued to bombard her with offensive emails after she was convicted last month. She added, "Daniel is one of her numerous victims. I believe she is upsetting dozens of people. She has a long history of doing this type of thing. They could be men or women, and there is often no rhyme or reason to it. And this is, for me, the indictment. Thames Valley Police spokesman James Clements said, "We received a complaint in July 2006 from Mr. Hart. Bear in mind, this is a criminal we're talking about.
Yeah.
Convicted criminal. But no further action was taken due to inconclusive evidence at the time." And then he says, if new evidence comes to light and a follow-up complaint is made, then we will investigate it. This is my follow-up complaint.
Yeah.
And Thames Valley Police spokesman has made a promise. I don't know whether the guy's alive or dead or works for Thames Valley Police or not. It's not my issue. I'm talking about the entire body of Thames Valley Police.
Yeah. Right, that's fine. Like I said, obviously the complaint, I've encapsulated what would be, the level of service, you've had throughout the sort of process anyway, and the fact that you feel like evidence was dismissed and, nothing was taken notice of in that respect, and then obviously the particular office that you have mentioned.
That's right. Yeah. And I've already put 2 emails across, okay?
Yeah, I've mentioned that you've already emailed them twice as well. And had nothing.
So before I bother with no win, no fee solicitors, I'd like a dialogue with Thames Valley Police.
Yeah.
And I've also I'll be transparent. I've also been doing that on Twitter.
Yeah.
With the Chief Constable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't expect a response from Thames Valley Police's Twitter, but I've done it because I believe it's in the public interest. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make it my life's mission because I've got better things to do.
Absolutely.
I just want justice and I want compensation.
Yeah. I understand, Daniel.
All right?
I will put this together. So I've got the log here. I just need to sort of create it, as it were, and get it sent across for you. It will take a moment to get a reference number. Are you okay to just hold on the line, or do you want me to give you a call back?
No. I'm happy to wait as long as. Listen, I've had 2 decades. I think I can wait a few minutes.
Okay, all right, no worries. Bear with me one moment. You said you're currently now living in Birmingham, away from Oxford.
Yes.
Yeah.
The best thing I could have done.
How's Birmingham versus Oxford in terms of a place?
Pardon?
How is Birmingham versus Oxford? Never lived in Birmingham.
Well, I mean, it's a mixed city, but I live in a really nice area, actually.
Okay.
I can go next door to Sainsbury's, even the local beggars I can chat to and things like that, and it makes me feel much less isolated. I lived in Lye Valley, which is a stunning nature reserve in East Oxford, Holloway, yeah?
Yeah.
For 25 years.
Okay,
But I lived alone, and it was very much a family street, so I was isolated, and I don't think it was good for my health really in the end.
No.
So living in a flat in a city, proper city, where you're in the thick of it, rather than a number 20 bus into a rather dead town full of closed shops, which Oxford has become. It's the best choice I could have made. But I might not have made it ever had it not been for the nightmare that the police have put me through.
Yeah.
Sheer hell, terror. And they told me it was a civil matter. In other words, get out your checkbook, mate. Pay these bastard lawyers £800 an hour because we're not interested. It's not criminal. Can you see why I'm that angry?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. I've also taken down 2 copies of her blog
Yeah.
in text form, just in case she deletes it.
Okay. Have you screenshotted them? Are they able to be screenshotted?
I could definitely screenshot them, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's always the best. At least I've always found it the easiest, best way to sort of encapsulate the whole screen, as it were.
Well, it's difficult because it's literally it just goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
I can't. She's not going to take that down because the whole the blog. This is Felicity's case using WordPress. Here we go. Felicity Loud. The injustices from 2005 to the present day. Right now.
Right.
Let me just find just a few choice samples. It's all nonsense, garbled, mental bullshit. But Felicity Loud was arrested in October 2006 on the basis of malicious false allegations made by Daniel Hart, a graphic designer from Lye Valley, Headington, Oxford, who runs a company website named Inspire Graphics. Daniel Hart's false allegations were later dismissed by investigating police and CPS. Daniel Hart has been repeatedly treated at the Warnford Psychiatric, which is true, at the Warnford Psychiatric Hospital in Oxford. Daniel Hart, who had been pestering and harassing Felicity for months, which is not true, falsely accused Felicity of writing blogs to defend herself against harassment and abuse she was receiving at the time. It's hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot there that she seems to sort of...
So apparently, I'm falsely accusing Felicity of writing blogs that the police saw with their own eyes, saying that I rape and murder women.
Yeah.
And then it goes on. The rest... she mentioned Sergeant Colin Brooker of Thames Valley Police. She's got persecution complex everywhere. Lawyers, police, everything. Now, okay, here we go. I'm just cussing out the crap. Daniel Hart harassed Felicity via cyber-stalking her and physically stalking her from the early days of the professional relationship onwards. His behaviour began during the course of the professional relationship, during which time, right, he boasted about domestic abuse involving throwing an Oxford woman down the stairs.
That's horrible. Question why people write things like that,
Because she doesn't deserve to exist, okay? In my opinion, she needs the darkest corner of the galaxy with no food and water. But the compassionate me, and it's very difficult to be compassionate about a person as evil as that, is that she needs to go straight to mental hospital or prison. And I would say prison without question. Forget mental hospital. She doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
Most of the people in prison are mentally ill anyway. Mostly because of spice psychosis.
Yeah.
You must know about that.
Psychosis.
Spice, the NPS drug.
Oh, spice. Yes, I have heard of it, yeah.
Well, I was spiked with it, and it's the only word I can say is satanic. I completely lost any sense of myself. Totally. I was looking down on my dead body. But an hour later, I had recovered. It was just the most traumatic time as well. So here we go. Officer Colin Brooker frequently telephoned Felicity during this time, asking me to come and have a chat with himself and Daniel Hart. I mean, Colin Brooker's pathetic. She refused this invitation due to Daniel Hart's alarming and distressing ongoing harassment and stalking of her. Okay? During this time, this Sergeant Colin Brooker also liaised with Special Branch Police in relation to historical research material that Felicity had photographed while working on Special Branch police archives. The fact is, Special Branch sued her for £50,000, which she didn't have because she was homeless. Okay? Throughout the period, Daniel was stalking and harassing Felicity. She spoke to Sergeant Colin Brooker of Thames Valley Police, expressing her unhappiness with the situation, I mean, fantasy, and communicating detail about it. However, her requests for help were categorically ignored by this police officer, which is the one good thing Colin Brooker did. Ignore a raving lunatic.
Okay.
But he also told me not to look at the blogs if it was going to upset me, which is a grotesque dereliction of duty.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly not advice you should give someone to stop them from
Right.
reporting something.
The world has changed a lot since then. That was the era of MySpace. Now we've got Facebook as a cesspit where bullies somehow get away without the AI. It's not always the case, of course. People who are harassing and abusing should be banned or reprimanded. But there's so many cases with Facebook. Yeah, I could talk to you about that for hours. It's just another example of injustice. I literally just, I've got a veterinary nurse friend, German, and she mentioned a dog's anal glands, right?
Okay.
And she was banned by the robots at Facebook for adult sexual solicitation.
For mentioning the word, did you say?
Adult sexual solicitation for a vet to talk about an animal's body part. And
Wow.
and Facebook has the sheer cheek to talk about decency and community standards. Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
So I see injustice everywhere. That's why Donald Trump got into power. But let's focus on this.
When you're ready, Daniel, I've got the reference number here for you as well.
Okay. I'm just trying to find anything else because she picked up on every single one of my convictions with relish.
Yeah.
And quoted all the magistrate's court report links and stuff. Now, I think the rest of it just needs to be studied by someone else.
Yeah. To be fair, Daniel, when these get sent across, and obviously numerous cases are mentioned, at that point, they have to look through all of them in the respect of between the years. So I've put the years that it's happened between. Mentioned that the few officers that you can remember names of, but however, that this encapsulates officers and service levels that were given to you and support that wasn't there throughout the course of those years. So they do have to look at the various things that we might not have necessarily spoken about, but will be within that time frame, if that makes sense.
Correct, yeah. I mean, a final thing, which is to quote Rachel North, who I'm not in touch with, and I hope she's okay and all, and that was that. But she said one article said which was the Grenfell Tower obscenity, right? Where Loud was just going on about, I will report you to the police and this is nothing short of harassment and stuff like that, okay? She's the worst harasser on the fucking planet.
Yeah,
right?
From what you've told me, it just sounds
Yeah.
very prolific, yeah.
Prolific and very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable I haven't killed myself.
Well, I'm glad you haven't.
Well, right, and I'm making good steps. Anyway, it says, but Miss, and that's why I'm taking action. But it says, but Miss Loud has a history. In 2007, she was arrested typing at a keyboard at a London cyber cafe while reportedly on the run from the authorities after being convicted in her absence for cyber stalking rape victim and survivor of the 7/7 London terror bombings, Rachel North, who reported that the harassment had left her living in terror.
Yeah, it's just utterly horrible for her.
And that link was the Evening Standard, and it was in the Guardian, the Independent,